Hello everyone, Snedds here. Just a quick forward to this episode 8 of the Scratchcast. Much like Star Wars episode 8, The Last Jedi, of which the content and themes were deemed too wild for long-time fans and subject to numerous reshoots resulting in a quite awful movie, this episode has also been deemed far too radical for public consumption. Well, actually, what really happened is that we recorded the episode via Skype, and my audio turned out so bad that I had to re-record almost all of it. Grant's audio isn't too bad for the most part, and if you think it sounds bad, well, I've left in the odd snippet of my audio throughout the episode. So, despite the audio issues, I hope you enjoy the episode. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the Scratchcast, Scotland's greatest podcast. I don't know if we're allowed to call it that.
Who's going to stop us, Snedds?
You'll share man's greatest thrill. They tried and failed. They tried and died.
You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
Okay, maybe I'll start that again.
May as well.
Hello and welcome to the Scratchcast, the alternative pop culture podcast. I'm your host Snedds, and as always I'm joined by your other host, the almighty Grant Patterson. We are, as everyone is, separated by fate, so we're doing this over Skype today. Hopefully we've already got the technical glitches out of the way after the nightmare we had setting this up. All going well, it should be fine. On the plus side of this, you'll get to see our ugly mugs up on screen for a change. I don't know if that's a plus or a minus, but keep an eye out for that when it goes up on YouTube. Anyway, how are you coping with the lockdown, Grant?
Yeah, fine, to be honest. Like, my life really hasn't changed all that much. Still going to work, because as you know, I am a NHS superhero. So I'm still expected to go to work. I'm still able to get pretty much everything I need. I'm still seeing family members. The only thing that, obviously, I'm not able to do is kind of see yourself and other kind of friends and family. And a few of the things that I've planned to go to see have been cancelled or rescheduled for later on in the year. But yeah, it doesn't really affect me all that much. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. Like, I'm still going to work, albeit virtually. I'm lucky enough to be able to take my office equipment home and work from home, so like, similarly to you, not all that much has changed really, other than some gigs being postponed or cancelled and having to queue to get into the supermarket and that kind of thing. So other than being stuck indoors all the time, it doesn't really bother me too much.
I've had to get a skinhead.
Yeah.
I've kind of got standard issue COVID haircut. But it's alright. I mean, I think this is the first time I've had a skinhead in something like 10 years. So it's quite a nice change.
Right.
Breezy.
I'm wearing a hat so you can't see my 3-week unwashed hair.
3-week unwashed? Or uncut?
Unwashed? That was a joke. Or was it?
I'm tempted to grow out a beard. The only problem with that is if we get some infected patients through the door, I'll have to shave it off anyway so I can get the proper masks fitted.
Right.
Kind of like information posters making its way around the hospital. Like, you might have seen them. They look like a joke, but they're real. You know what I mean? They are like legit NHS pieces of information. And it's like little pictures of men, unacceptable moustaches that they can have. So I think you can have like a Hulk Hogan type moustache. I remember there's a picture of a guy with what they describe as the Dali. So like the proper kind of Dali moustache, and that's got a cross over it. So you're not allowed that. I think he'd probably get away with a wee Hitler moustache.
I mean,
whether he went to rock that or not is another question right now.
Officially he might get away with that, but socially, is that a socially acceptable style?
It's got social implications. Yeah, definitely.
We'll maybe move
off the coronavirus for the time being.
Yeah, so the only other thing the lockdown has given me the opportunity to do is host some Facebook watch parties, the first of which was this weekend past, Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. We had a handful of people watching, so that was quite fun.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that show I've got it on DVD, but I just haven't watched it in probably going on 10 years at this point.
I honestly can't remember the last time I saw it. I think you probably did lend me the DVDs. I think I watched it on Channel 4 or saw a few episodes on Channel 4 and initially didn't really know what to make of it, to be honest. A wee bit like Mighty Bush, it kind of scared me a bit. To a few years later that I kind of got into it through your likes yourself. That was certainly the first time I'd watched Lerner with Dean Lerner.
Man to Man with Dean Lerner.
That's the first time I'd watched that. And I really enjoyed that wee short. Really enjoyed that. I wish it had went on for longer. I was really getting into it.
Yeah, that's called A Gun for George, and yeah, it was really good. I absolutely love Garth Marenghi, and like you, I hadn't seen Man to Man with Dean Lerner either. I knew it existed, but for whatever reason, I never watched it. But yeah, I quite enjoyed that first episode with Garth Marenghi as a guest as well.
But I did kind of feel as if Richard Ayoade, it kind of felt as if he was playing it as Richard Ayoade as opposed to Dean Lerner. That's the impression I got. I still enjoyed it because I like Richard Ayoade stuff. Like, I enjoy watching him on like Crystal Maze and Gadget Man and stuff like that. But I didn't feel as if he was really in the role as Dean Lerner, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Richard Ayoade is kind of a strange character anyway, so he maybe just seems like himself, even when he's meant to be in kooky character mode.
Maybe.
I don't know. Yeah, it was good.
So we'll be doing a bunch more watch parties with various TV shows and movies in the future, so keep an eye out for those.
Anyway, so
what about today's episode? So on today's episode, we're talking about albums from Code Orange, The Big Moon and Violent Soho, and the new Common Sense EP
from
from Scratchcast favourites, Viagra Boys. But before we move on to the album reviews, we've got the small matter of our singles swap to attend to. So each month we swap a recent-ish single which we'll go away and listen to and discuss on the next podcast. On last month's episode, Grant gave me I Only Drink When I'm Drunk by indie rocker BC Camplight, and I gave Grant Annabelle by gothic punk's Creeper. Where do you want to start, Granty boy?
I'm quite happy to discuss Annabelle by Creeper.
Okay, go for it.
So Snedds was saying there, that was the single he gave me. Single itself was released on the 19th of January, at the start of this year. It was accompanied by another song called Born Cold. Born Cold was also previously released as a single in and of itself on the 3rd of November 2019, so just kind of towards the end of the year. And they're both singles from their up-and-coming second album, Sex, Death and Infinite Void, which is due to be released on the 29th of May 2020. It's available for pre-order on their label's website, roadrunnerrecords.co.uk, along with lots of other merch, and it kind of comes as part of bundles, which kind of a lot of bands are doing nowadays. So you can get like patches, and I think you can get like a songbook, which will be full of the kind of lyrics from the album, and various different kind of hoodies, t-shirts and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I quite enjoyed the single. For some reason, and I've said to you before, I couldn't get it out of my head, but it reminded me of Suede's Beautiful People.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's just the kind of the opening, the kind of introduction. I mean, I've listened to both songs back to back, and I'm like, that's actually nothing like Suede's Beautiful People. Like, what the fuck are we thinking? But I think there is elements. I think it's the lead guitar in both songs that are quite similar. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I was quite surprised to find out that they're English.
Yeah.
Maybe the lead singer's American, but they certainly sound American. There was times where I kind of felt as if the lead vocalist sounded a wee bit like Billie Joe Armstrong from Green Day. I thought their voices were quite similar, and I thought, well, maybe they're just from the same place. You know, I mean, they're from California somewhere, so they've just got the same accent. But no, they're originally from Southampton. The band themselves formed in 2014. They're described online as being a punk rock band, and I suppose I kind of felt that they were quite similar in sound and feel to the likes of Alkaline Trio, AFI, and right enough, this is a comparison that's made on their kind of Wikipedia page. Yeah, I've kind of listened to their back catalogue as well. Really quite enjoyed it. One song in particular, Hiding with Boys. You heard that song?
Is it on Eternity in Your Arms?
Yes, it is.
I've heard it. I'm not, like, I really like that album. I'm not very good with track names. But yeah, so I will have heard that song.
It's off their first album, like you said, Eternity in Your Arms was released 3 years ago now, 2017, and it sounds very much like an Alkaline Trio song. Like,
Yeah.
I would have thought that was an Alkaline Trio had I not known that it was Creeper. Yeah, really quite enjoyed it. What else could I say about it? I suppose it's quite poppy, easy to listen to, easy to sing along to, anthemic at times, especially during the chorus when you've got what I assume is the kind of rest of the band coming in with these ahs. And I think it's going to be it's destined to be a kind of major crowd pleaser. You could imagine the crowd kind of really getting into that and kind of really enjoying it, singing along. The wee interlude, which is around the kind of 3-minute mark, where you've got this kind of sparse piano and drums, and the lead vocalist is singing about underworld kids, where we'll sing Hallelujah. And then there's this almost kind of computerized woman's voice that sings what I believe to be God Has Left the Building or something like that. And it just kind of bursts back into the chorus. And as you know yourself, mentioned it loads of times within the podcast, I love that quite loud dynamic. And I'm sure that's going to please quite a lot of people. And you just can't help but get hooked. I was instantly hooked by it. Yeah, really enjoyed it. I've given it a kind of 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I think it's a really good single, and like you say, their previous stuff is quite like the likes of Alkaline Trio and what have you, and that's what got me into the band in the first place. This song is quite a bit poppier, but it's all about that chorus, which is just massive. It's a huge moment every time it comes around. That sort of breakdown part you talked about, where it goes a bit quieter before bursting back into the chorus, is just a great part of the song.
Oh, I definitely.
But yeah, there's not much more to say other than what we've already said, really. It's just a fantastic track, and it'll be quite interesting to see where the new album goes, because they released Born Cold before this, which is another sort of punky rock track, and then Annabelle is a bit poppier, and then you've got Cyanide, which came out later, and it's even more poppy, with even shades of David Bowie at times. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go with the rest of the album.
I really enjoyed Born Cold. I really enjoyed that. Maybe slightly more than Annabelle, actually. And in particular, I really liked the lead singer's vocalist. I think the lead singer is called like William Golt or something like that. However, they were kind of reminiscent of, the lead singer from Bright Eyes.
Not really.
You had heard his stuff. It sounded quite similar to that, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I would totally agree. It'd be interesting to see what the new album's like, and I think we should look into it, maybe review it in the next podcast.
Yeah, definitely. If I'm going to give a rating, it'll be an 8 or 9, definitely.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's move on to BC Camplight. The single you gave me is I Only Drink When I'm Drunk, and I think I described BC Camplight as a sort of indie rocker or something in the intro there. Not a very accurate description, really.
Not really. I mean, as we've said before, this kind of indie rock or indie pop or just even indie alternative as well. I mean, it's such a broad genre. You know what I mean? I really don't think that's necessarily all that fitting for this guy. This is, I mean, that was the only song I'd heard of his when I recommended him to you. He just kind of popped up in my kind of Spotify feed, through the kind of Spotify algorithm, obviously based off stuff that I was listening to at the time. Very interesting sound.
I think this is really cool. Like, it sort of opens up like a post-apocalyptic western. It's got that sort of reverberating guitar sound that you hear in old westerns, but it's got like a sort of weird, slow, booming, decaying, thunderous noise in the background. So it's all very dark and moody. And then it's got that line that you mentioned last time round. This afternoon I thought about Buckfast and space and danced around my kitchen singing Ace of Base. As an opening couple of lines, that's as cool as you can get, really. and it's got this kind of floaty, sort of laid-back stoner vibe, I suppose. There is a sort of chorus with the kind of "I only drink when I'm drunk" refrain, and it's got these kind of weird auto-tune vocals and a tinkling piano sound, and it just ends on this massive battering ram drum rattle that you'll join in with every time it happens. But that auto-tune vocal has got the potential to put a lot of people off, but I think it sounds really cool, and it's quite fitting with the other sort of weird noises that are going on in the song. And I just like the fact that it's got that dark and moody sound. It's got a sense of humour. It's also kind of bright and poppy at the same time. It reminds me of the sort of stuff you might hear from the Flaming Lips or maybe the Super Furry Animals kind of stuff.
That's exactly what I've said. But yeah, well, I said reminded me of Super Furry Animals. But yeah, you're right enough. I mean, it wouldn't be out of place on a Flaming Lips album.
Yeah, I think it's excellent, and I was really surprised by how much I liked it. So I think, again, it's an 8 or a 9 easily if I were to rate it. I think it's a really good track, and I haven't had the chance to listen to anything else by BC Camplight yet, but I think the album's out now. No, is it an EP?
So this is one of the singles. So I Only Drink When I'm Drunk. It was released on the 26th of February this year. It's one of the singles released from his up-and-coming 5th studio album called Shortly After Takeoff. I think there's a single of the same name that's been released as well. I can't remember if I've listened to that one or not. I've listened to the other single though. And the album's due to be released on the 24th of May, so next month, towards the end of next month. Almost a month to the day. Again, as with Creeper's album, it's available for pre-order from his label Bella Union's merch website, as well as kind of other websites. I really enjoyed it. I've pretty much written word for word exactly what you've said. With regards to the kind of introduction, I described it as opens with this kind of haunting, almost Western-esque sounding guitar with weird ethereal sounds playing in the background, which is more or less how you described it. Yeah, it's I suppose on the face of it, it's quite light-hearted, I suppose. Obviously, as you said, it kind of opens with that kind of funny lyric, and then similarly, I think the second verse opens with similarly odd lyrics. I can't be bothered running after rabbits or Mancunians.
Yeah.
However, I was reading an interview with the singer, who's called Brian Crescenzio. I probably haven't pronounced that. I know for a fact I haven't pronounced that properly. This is what he said of the track. People that are struggling in life, be it from stress, loss, or mental illness, are more likely to behave in self-destructive ways. The idea of only drinking when you're drunk is the notion that sometimes we hurt ourselves because we are hurting. The verses reflect the feelings some of us have when we are plodding through our lives. The choruses are what happens when the feelings get the best of us. Make that what you will. I kind of felt the other way around, though. I kind of felt as if like the chorus was more upbeat and uplifting, and the verses were quite odd, haunting, disjointed. More more reflective of somebody going through hard times, as it were.
Yeah.
It's almost like plodding along in a sort of depressed state, I suppose. And then the chorus is, the chorus is definitely more upbeat. I think artists' descriptions or interpretations of their own songs are often quite complex, and often you listen to something and go, I don't get it, mate, but I think the song's great.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily get the reasons they've written it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I would kind of agree. I gave it kind of an 8 or 9 out of 10, definitely. Yeah, well worth a listen.
This afternoon I thought about Buckfast and Spain.
Who we're going to look into now?
So
I'm going to give you a song called Sand by Belgian band Brutus, who are a kind of shoegazy rock band with elements of punk and metal, so they're a bit harder hitting than your average floaty shoegaze band. That came out on the 7th of March, I think, and it's a previously unreleased track, and I think it comes from the studio sessions for their album Nest, which came out about the same time last year. And I kind of want you to listen to this because, well, it's a good song, but I just kind of want an excuse to talk about Brutus because I fucking love them.
Fair enough. Good a reason as any. What have I got for you? Let me have a look at my notes. So I have Martin.
Martin?
Martin, yeah. By a band called Carseat Headrest.
I've heard of Carseat Headrest, but that's about as far as I can say.
Aye. So I'd heard of them before. I gave them a listen, but I don't know. Like I don't know if it was their older stuff or not. I really don't know. But I listened to a few of their tracks and just couldn't get into it for whatever reason. But I really enjoyed this single, and it was released on the 23rd of March. They're described online as being like an American indie band. I think they originally formed in maybe Pennsylvania or something like that now, but they're based in Seattle now. They've got 8 previous studio albums, so quite a lot of material out there. And so this is a single from their 9th studio album, which is going to be entitled Making a Door Less Open, which is due to be released on the 1st of May 2020. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, man. I think it would be interesting to see what you make it.
Yeah, cool. So that's Sand by Brutus and Martin by Carseat Headrest. Alright, well, will we just move on to the album reviews now then?
Yeah, go for it, man.
So, I think we both agreed earlier that we would just start in the order of release, so that means The Big Moon, I suppose. So, this is Walking Like We Do by The Big Moon. I think it's their 2nd studio album. And The Big Moon are an all-female London 4-piece. We talked about them on the last episode when we covered the single Your Light, which is safe to say we both really like, and I'm interested to hear how you feel the rest of the album compares to that song.
I think I said to you before, I didn't really like the album at first. I seem to remember turning it off, if I'm honest. I think I skipped to the first few singles, so that the album opens with It's Easy Now, which coincidentally is the first Big Moon song I heard, and then I heard Your Light shortly after that. And that's the 2nd track on the album. So it kind of starts off really strong, because those are cracking tracks. But I did kind of feel as if there was a wee bit of a dip in quality. But I have to say, the album as a whole has grown on me, and there's a lot of tracks in there that I do really enjoy.
Yeah, I listened to this for the first time on just a car journey back and forth from the shops, so I was only kind of half paying attention to it while I was driving. And I kind of had the same impression, like, I don't think this is great. It kind of just merged into the background a wee bit, but like you said, it starts really strong. But yeah, on the 3rd track, Dog Eat Dog, there was a noticeable dip, and I don't know if it just seems to be some of the elements on some of the songs aren't as strong as others. You know, some of the jaunty melodies on the choruses and things don't really grab me as much, particularly on that first listen. But I think it's an album that's worth sitting down and listening to from start to finish and just paying attention to, because you'll get a lot more out of it that way, especially on repeat listens, because there's a lot on there that's really rewarding. There's loads of great melodies, lots of cool instrumentation, and some slick harmonies with the backing vocals as well. It's quite there's a lot of melancholy on there, but it's quite fun at the same time. Even on individual songs, there are often like a melancholic intro, which then gives way to a more jaunty chorus and that kind of thing. So I definitely like this a lot more now than I did initially.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there. As you said, like, there's a lot of commentary on quite bleak, well, not bleak stuff, maybe that's a bit too harsh a word to use, but I mean, the 3rd track, Dog Eat Dog, for example, it's kind of commentary on kind of injustices and stuff like that, and I think the injustices within society, it's got quite a good lyric in there. I think it's maybe, I don't think it's part of the chorus, it's maybe part of the first verse. Round here they say it's dog eat dog, but it's more like pigeon eating fried chicken on the street. So Yeah, like they kind of discuss quite a range of different topics. Like, for example, this song kind of discusses the injustice within society. There is a track called "Waves," I believe it is,
Yeah.
where they're singing about kind of the loss of a relationship. There's a kind of bittersweet track later on in the album called "Barcelona," where they kind of talk about people moving on. You know what I mean? Their friends and family. I think more so friends kind of moving on and kind of bettering their life in other places, i.e. Barcelona, and kind of getting married, and they're able to do it in quite a tongue-in-cheek way, I feel. And I suppose, as you were kind of saying, that kind of jaunty melodies and harmonies kind of serve well to kind of do that. One of the highlights for me in in the album has to be track number 5, though. I think that's probably my favourite track on the album.
Don't think. Yeah, that's a great song, man. So good.
It's really fucking cool. Like, really cool. I think it's one of the tracks I saw them play live when they were supporting Bombay Bicycle Club at the Barrowlands in Glasgow at the start of the year there. And I just feel as if it's a really cool song. I think the harmonies work really well. And I absolutely love the chorus, which has this kind of really smooth bass line that runs through it. There's this kind of minimal yet effective drum beats that work really well. And it just kind of catapults into this other level with this kind of really, really good kind of driving guitar before returning to the kind of main verse. However, the second time you kind of hear the chorus, rather than going kind of straight back to the verse, that kind of verse, chorus, verse kind of dynamic, you get this kind of, I've kind of described it as anthemic again, with the band singing "You Got to Make Your Move" or something like that, and you just can't help but sing along to it. And I've described it as a real earworm. I've kind of been humming it away to myself for weeks now. It's just great, and then it just finishes on this high, this kind of almost wall of sound. And I have to say, it is the standout track of the album for me. The singles are brilliant, don't get me wrong, but Don't Think is probably my favourite track on the album.
Yeah,
I really like the sort of just the general groove to that song. There's almost a bit of disco element to it.
Yeah.
Which is quite strange, and that might normally put me off, but it's subtle. Don't get me wrong, this isn't Saturday Night Fever or whatever. There's just that sort of element to it, so it's quite a groovy track. Then there's that line in it that goes, "Just don't think about it now, just don't think about it now, or your head will talk you out of it." And that's a great moment. It's definitely a standout for me, but I would say that I think my favourite song on the album is Take a Piece, which I think is track 8.
Yeah, so that was another single from the album.
It's got a sort of oriental quality to it through the piano melody, and it's got a really sort of poppy chorus as well, and really cool backing vocals. They're just sort of oohs and ahs, but they blend in really well with the rest of the chorus, and the lyrics are, "Take a piece of me, put me on the pages of your life story." There's something about the melody of that which reminds me of the song Stacey's Mum by Fountains of Wayne. It's just subtle, and obviously Stacey's Mum is kind of a comedy song, but it's a really quality like pop rock song, and I hear elements of that in Take a Piece. It's just a really good song, and I think if you play something like Take a Piece or Don't Think on radio, they should really be hits.
Oh, aye, absolutely.
I don't know what this sort of
general listener thinks of that, but to my ears it's a perfect piece of radio friendly pop music.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would say all the singles from the album, It's Easy Now, Your Light, and Take a Piece should be hits, should be chart toppers. But whether they're getting any radio play or not, I don't know.
Yeah,
I've no idea. I think that's a shame if they're not getting played on the radio, because those songs especially deserve to reach a wider audience.
So,
overall, I really enjoy the album. There's no bad songs. There are just bits here and there on some of the songs I like less than others. But from start to finish, it's a really enjoyable listen. And, there's all sorts of kind of trembling piano sounds and funky guitar licks and just all sorts of cool stuff. The bass is really cool and the drums are really interesting and the vocals are excellent as well. And the lead vocals certainly, but the backing vocals and harmonies as well. So it's a high quality album. It's just, there are, within the songs themselves, there were the odd dips that lose my interest a little. I mean, even Your Light has that pre-chorus section that took me out of it a little bit, but It doesn't detract too much from the overall song, so there's just bits here and there that I don't like quite as much. Generally, I think this is a really good album.
Yeah. I suppose it's worth mentioning as well, we kind of mentioned it previously when we were discussing Your Light, that they all take a turn in playing the instruments. They all kind of swap instruments, and they're a really tight band live, really tight band, really tight. There's no kind of drop in quality there at all. Like, they're just fantastic. I was overjoyed. I never realised that they were supporting Bombay Bicycle Club, so it was a great surprise. I'd like to go and see them live again. Absolutely. As a wee overview of the album, I've kind of described it as perfectly executed, bright, breezy indie pop that's full of, stuff that we've already mentioned, infectious melodies and uplifting harmonies. And as you said, there is a wee bit of a drop of quality in some of the songs, but overall it's a fantastic album. I gave it a rating of 8 or 9 out of 10. That's how I felt about it.
I think I'd be happy with an 8.
Because I definitely think it's an album that it's a must-listen album, definitely. And okay, it's not going to be for everybody, but I definitely think it's worth checking out, and I think a lot of people will be pleasantly surprised.
Definitely, man. Definitely.
So, that was Walking Like We Do by The Big Moon.
I'm so bored of being capable. Just don't think about it now. Just don't think about it now. Or your head will talk you out of it. And whenever we get up, I still think I'm dreaming. And remember your life.
What we're going to move on to next?
What you got next?
I'm looking at the dates here. Is it Common Sense?
It doesn't matter. Let's just do Common Sense. Anyway.
Let's do Common Sense. That's what I've got here. So, as we said, Viagra Boys is a podcast favourite. We previously reviewed their deluxe edition of Streetworms, which was released last year. Their EP, Common Sense, it was released on the 6th of March 2020. It consists of 4 songs and is approximately 14 minutes and 23 seconds long. I think I said to you before that I initially kind of felt as if the EP Common Sense had been made with common sense sensibilities, but as you quite rightly pointed out, the first line of the first track at the same name is, why can't you have a little common sense? Why does the chicken water float up to your head? So that kind of trademark wacky zany lyrics are still there, and I suppose the first track's all right. It does, musically, it does kind of feel more somber than their kind of previous numbers if you compare it to like a kind of Frog Strap, Jungle Man, Shrimp Shack. However, I've kind of said that you can still hear that kind of saxophone kind of somewhere in the background, as if it's almost like a caged beast kind of dying to be unleashed. And it gets full rein and goes kind of full throttle in the kind of second song, Lick the Bag, which musically, I suppose, is more like, the songs that I've kind of just mentioned there. And I would say Lick the Bag is definitely the highlight of the EP, in my opinion. I don't know if you're the same opinion or not.
I think when we talked about this before, my initial impression of this EP was that it was almost like leftover tracks from the Streetworm sessions.
We reviewed the deluxe version, which had a number of extra tracks, and they were probably the leftovers from the original album, maybe. Left off because the band didn't think they quite fit with the rest of the record. And the impression I got on first listen was that maybe these songs were too, but actually, the more that I've listened to them, I feel a little bit bad about saying that, because I actually think these tracks are really good, and they're not just leftover demos, that weren't seemed to be good enough or whatever. But I take your point about Common Sense, in that it's definitely more restrained and sounds like the band are perhaps turned over a new leaf or something in this opening track, like, we're going to play it cool now, but like you said, the lyrics are still ridiculous. The more I listen to Common Sense, the more I like it, because it's a slow build, and it just builds and builds and builds before finally bursting into Lick the Bag. And I think that's a really awesome way for this EP to open up. Throughout Common Sense, like you say, it's got that saxophone that's just begging to be unleashed, and then, when Lick the Bag bursts into life, all hell breaks loose in the more traditional Viagra Boys style, or the likes of Shrimp Shack or Special Helmet. So, Lick the Bag is just such a cool song. It's so cool. And I think it's just about doing coke and getting one last hit by licking the dregs from your baggie of drugs. You say that's a highlight for you. I would say the last track, Blue, is a highlight for me.
Yeah. And I think it's just because it's a bit different.
And there were slower paced songs on Streetworms, right enough, which I quite enjoyed, but it's just, there's something about it, and I think it's because it sounds like the singer is kind of channeling Tom Waits. There's a sort of sombre, creaking style to the vocals, and it's a sort of confessional about not being the man that he appears to be, and just being this arsehole that does everybody wrong kind of thing. And yeah, I think it's great. It's not perhaps the sort of song you think of when you think of Viagra Boys, but I think it's a really cool track and a really great end to the EP.
Yeah, I'll be that, man.
After the slow-paced opening of Common Sense, you end with the slow-paced closer of Blue, separated by the banger that is Lick the Bag, and then there's also Sentinel Island.
Where he's talking about even more drugs, heroin and fentanyl, both opiate-based analgesics of a sort. I've kind of described it as kind of smooth, laid-back, almost lounge music, or muzak. But yeah, I mean, I did enjoy it. You know what I mean? Yeah, I suppose, with the exception of Lick the Bag, I suppose it is more of a kind of... It shows another side of the band, doesn't it? The EP.
Yeah, I mean...
Sentinel Island reminded me a little bit of the song Just Like You from Streetworms, which is a much more restrained affair. And it's a pretty decent track. There was something about the name of it that intrigued me, so I looked Sentinel Island up, and it's part of the Andaman Islands in the Bay of Bengal, which is between the coasts of India and Thailand and Malaysia. So basically, the indigenous population don't take too kindly to outsiders and tend to violently reject visitors. So the lyrics kind of attest to that. I'm floating down the river in my rubber canoe, and I brought you chicken dinners blessed by Jesus and his crew. I came here to show you my computer and my shoes, but you shot me with an arrow. That wasn't really cool. I just think the idea of a Westerner going onto a remote island, showing off their fancy gear, expecting to wow the locals, but instead getting violently attacked is hilarious, and that made the song a little bit more interesting for me. But regardless, it's still pretty good. It's a decent track.
Cool. What rating did you give it?
I think probably an 8, because it's definitely a good EP. I think when I first heard it, I might have given it a 7, but I think the more I've listened to it, the more I've gained more of an appreciation for the opening tracks, certainly. Lick the Bag's just a banger, Blue is mesmerising, and I think Sentinel Island, it's the weakest track and my least favourite, but it's still decent, so it's a pretty fun, short-lived follow-up to Streetworms.
Yeah, and very possibly part of a kind of new album, a kind of full-length album.
Possibly.
Fingers crossed. I gave it a 7 out of 10. So
yeah. I think that's probably fair.
Did you see any of the lead up to the release of the EP?
I watched that video that you tagged me on Facebook, but that was it. That's all I saw. Was there more?
No,
there were just kind of weird teasers, and it all sort of revolves around this fake corporation, Shrimp Tech Industries. It's just kind of nonsense videos, and there was a boardroom meeting where the band are sort of announcing their plans for the EP, and everyone's just sitting around eating spaghetti. It's just an odd thing that's worth mentioning. I like the sense of humour this band's got.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I mean, that's evidenced in the video for Sports, which I think is just fantastic.
Yeah.
He's just, there's two people playing tennis, and he's just kind of stalking about, top off, wearing shades, and I think like Adidas tracky bottoms or something like that. And just singing Sports, which is a great song.
Yeah, it's like a junkie who's accidentally stumbled in a community centre or something.
Aye, pretty much. A man having a mental breakdown. But yeah, obviously you were meant to be seeing them pretty soon.
Yeah,
They were supposed to be playing Summer Hall in Edinburgh in June, but I think it's been postponed till later in the year. Whether that will actually go ahead or just end up being cancelled is anybody's guess at this stage.
Hopefully, I mean, a lot of kind of gigs and live podcast recordings and stuff like that are now getting rescheduled for later on in the year, kind of September, October time. And a wee bit of inside NHS information for you people out there. Apparently, the coronavirus pandemic is meant to be reaching its peak like now, like in a couple of days. So once that's over and done with, we should be on the kind of downward turn. Hopefully things will start returning to normal slowly but surely. I imagine stuff like gigs and other big social gatherings will probably be the last thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think anything that puts people in close proximity of each other will be last on the list, I'm sure.
Yeah. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully it gets rescheduled rather than just cancelled. Because I think that'd be a fantastic gig to go to.
Hopefully. I think a band like that deserves to be seen in a small venue. I think it'll be absolutely mental.
Aye, absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of kind of high energy, high strangeness, probably, to be honest. If there's any spare tickets, I'll be there. If I can get time off work, I'll definitely be there.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye out for when it's been rescheduled, and hopefully it is rescheduled so we don't have to wait years for them to come back to Scotland. So, that was Common Sense, the new EP from Viagra Boys.
Yep.
Why can't you have a little common sense? Why does the chicken water flow right to your head? And if you're feeling down, you can lick the bag. I'm going to the island of the Sentinels. I never meant to make you blue. Way too many times.
What do you want to move on to?
Whatever. We could do Code Orange. I've got Code Orange sitting here in front of me.
Right, okay, let's just do Code Orange then. So,
This is another band we covered on the last podcast when we reviewed the single and title track Underneath. That song was released way back in January, so ever since I heard that, I've been champing at the bit to hear Code Orange's fourth studio album Underneath, the highly anticipated follow-up to Forever. Code Orange are a hardcore punk band from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but to simply call them a hardcore band would be doing them a disservice. They combine the punishing extreme vocals of hardcore with the menacing riffing and soloing of metal, and the brooding and moody tones of industrial music, all the while throwing in plenty of clean melodic vocals too. But they also use an incredibly diverse palette of electronics, including samples and glitches, which all add extra depth and layers to their unique sound. Another major component of this is the stop-start staccato nature of their sound. They don't often dwell on a certain thing for too long, and as a result there's a ton of diversity on here. There's a real flow to this album too, where each track merges seamlessly into the next. With all the changes in timing and direction and styles, it's sometimes difficult to know where one track ends and the next track begins. It's unfortunate that the album was released early on in the COVID-19 outbreak in the West, just as venues were beginning to be shut down, so unfortunately they had to cancel their launch shows in their hometown of Pittsburgh. However, they were one of the first bands to pull together a live stream show at extremely short notice, which they called The Last Ones Left in Fear of the End, and it was live streamed on Twitch. It was genuinely really excellent, mixing the weird sci-fi visuals that you see on the album artwork and videos with a genuinely incredible live performance. It was quite odd to hear no audience participation. At one point they even turned the camera around to show the completely empty venue. They're a fucking great live band though, and I urge anyone who's interested to check out The Last Ones Left, which is now available on YouTube. So, like I said, I've been excitedly anticipating the release of this album, and honestly, it hasn't failed to deliver on the promise of the early singles. I fucking love it. So, on that note, I'm keen to hear what your thoughts are on Underneath, Grant.
I would kind of agree with what you've said. I've kind of started off my notes just as a wee kind of reminder to myself saying, how would you describe their sound? I think online, as you said, they've described as kind of metalcore, post-hardcore, new metal, sludge metal, whatever the fuck that is. post-hardcore. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. I think when we discussed them previously, because obviously it was Underneath was the single that you gave me to review, I talked about having a bit of a kind of industrial sound, and there's certainly elements of that peppered throughout the album. I mean, there's instances where it actually sounds as if they're using actual bits of machinery throughout the course of the album. I think it's on track number 4, You and You Alone. It sounds as if they're like using a kind of chain or something like that.
I think it's actually a drum sound, but it sounds like pulling a chain through some kind of industrial equipment. But I think it is just a straight up drum sound on the top of the cymbals or something.
Really?
Yeah, I was trying to think of what it sounds like, and you illustrated it perfectly there with that sort of chain pulling action that you did.
Well, I mean, I've written that, I've kind of concluded that part of my notes by saying that I don't think you can really fit Code Orange into any one genre, and I think that their kind of material has to be judged in their own merit. The album itself, I'm not a massive fan. I'm not a massive metalhead. As I've just said, I've almost kind of contradicted myself there by saying that you can't fit them into any one genre, and then I've just went on to say that I'm not a massive metalhead.
You say that, but broadly speaking, they are a metal band.
Broadly speaking, yeah, they could be described as a metal band. And I suppose I'm not a massive fan of the genre, but there were certainly elements of it that I really enjoyed. Like I said, the album itself, a bit of a mixed bag for me. The single Underneath, songs such as Who I Am, Sulphur Surrounding, Autumn and Carbine, I thought they were brilliant. Like, songs that I've went back and listened to quite a lot and really can't get enough of, to be honest. And I think these are songs where the female vocalist, or who I assume is the female vocalist, Reba Myers, kind of clean vocals are kind of more prevalent. And as I said previously when we were kind of discussing Underneath, I quite like that juxtaposition between what I suppose you could describe as her clean vocals and the other singer, Jamie Morgan's, I don't know how you describe it. I've described it as kind of screamo vocals, kind of that kind of guttural metal sound. I quite enjoy when you've kind of got both of those in play. I'm not that big a fan of the songs where it's just him that's kind of really singing. That's not to say that there aren't elements that I really enjoy. As we said previously, there's kind of a lot of texture to the songs. Some of the riffs are phenomenal. You just can't help but kind of nod your head along to and kind of really get into. I think they're quite good at doing a lot of kind of atmospheric type stuff as well. They're quite moody. I suppose it's worth mentioning the opening track, Deeper Than Before, which I suppose is more of a prelude or introduction, kind of similar to things we've seen in other albums that we've reviewed in the past, like Black Future's NNN, Never Not Nothing, 2019 album. I've described it as being quite unnerving, intensely atmospheric. Then you've got kind of just under the kind of 30-second mark, you hear this kind of girl's voice saying, "Let's take a good look at you," which we see peppered throughout the course of the album as a kind of theme that runs throughout the course of the album on a few of the songs. And it feels like it's straight up from a horror movie.
Yeah,
it's terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And there are lots of terrifying moments on this album, but I mean that in a good way.
Aye.
But Deeper Than Before definitely sets the tone perfectly. That "Let's take a good look at you" line is both innocent and menacing, then followed by booming horn sounds that sound like they're coming from the depths of hell. That leads straight into the pounding drum intro and growling riffs of Swallowing the Rabbit Whole, which is one of my favourite songs on the album. It's just brutal, and those rough, serrated vocal screams from frontman Jamie Morgan would give an in-prime Corey Taylor a run for his money. In fact, Code Orange previously released an awesome track called The Hunt, which features Corey Taylor, and there's an impressive back and forth between the two vocalists on that track. That song came out around the time Slipknot announced they were recording a new album, which eventually turned out to be We Are Not Your Kind. That was released last year, and by the way, it's an absolute beast. But I digress. There's plenty to love on Swallowing the Rabbit Hole, but the insanely heavy staccato riff breakdown that starts around the 2-minute 50 mark, where weird electronic crashes and bursts combine with the guitars to create an insanely catchy headbanging moment. There's moments like that all over the album, but that's one of the very best. The next track, In Fear, opens with crunching riffs and a mad electronic crackle and a buzz that almost sounds like a swarm of deadly wasps. That sound keeps coming back, and again it sort of combines with the guitars to make this awesome groove that's just perfect to lose your shit to. And the riff that kicks in around the 2-minute 30 mark has an immense guitar tone. There is also this mad pause at the start of the song where everything just goes completely silent for a split second, like the sound's been deleted out of the track or something. It's weird, but I think it's a really clever trick that just adds an extra bit of something to the song. They actually pull this off live, and I've really no idea how they do it. There's a lot of weird things like that where they add in samples and sounds and glitches, and there was a lot going on, but I think they've thought very carefully about where everything goes and how it fits with the song, rather than just chucking things in and hoping it sounds good. You mentioned You and You Alone before, which opens like a nightmare full of horrifying glitching screams before bursting into a crushing groove with drums that, like you illustrated before, sound like some sort of industrial lifting crane. Who I Am is the most melodic track so far, with its Korn-inspired squealing, whining guitar intro underpinning guitarist and vocalist Reba Meyer's moody vocals. Cold Metal Place is a growling monster. The last minute of the song is the best moment though. Drilling drum attacks, guitar shrieks, vocal streams and growls all mixing to fantastic effect. I'd say the best track on the album is Sulphur Surrounding though.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And yeah, it really is fantastic and definitely my favourite song on the album. It demonstrates everything that's great about this record. While I do really like Jamie's vocals, I think that Reba's vocals on this track in particular are incredible. The soaring, clean yet hard-edged vocals on the chorus, I know you want it, you're glued to me so easy, sulphur surrounding, it puts you away, are just so impressive and infectious every time they come around. Layering the vocal screams under the cleans at perfunctory moments also creates a kind of otherworldly sound. There's that creepy girl sample again, Let's Take a Good Look at You, and I really like how they infuse the creepy acoustic guitar with massive fuzzed up bursts of electric guitar and the guitar solos that mimic the vocal melodies. It's just a perfect song. There are a couple of other standout tracks for me in particular. I feel like The Easy Way is Code Orange's attempt at a Nine Inch Nails song with the throbbing electronics, guitar stabs and radio static vocals. It's probably going to be the most commercially appealing track in terms of the mainstream, as that Don't Want to Know Who You Really Are chorus is a real earworm. It helps that it's a fucking banger too, and it has this great cool-off moment in the middle with sort of evil multi-track vocals and what sounds like a buzzing fly. Erasure opens with a shotgun blast of intensity and has an insane hardcore bounce. If you're into spin kicks, that's the one for you. And the last one's Left has a fist-pumping opening with gang vocals singing the song title. It's a great moment that returns multiple times throughout, alongside this Rammstein-esque stampeding riff. I feel like I've talked for ages here, but that's pretty much my thoughts on the album.
So what would you rate this album at?
I feel like
I fucking love this album. It's fucking brilliant, and I'm always reluctant to give 10 out of 10 scores to albums, but I feel like I have done a little bit willy-nilly in terms of like, you know, I mean, we gave Ghosteen a 10 because, well, it just is.
Absolutely.
I've obviously given Black Futures and Viagra Boys a 10, I think, too. And as much as I love those albums, I think this is better. So it's like, I can't not give this a 10.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah.
But I mean,
I think the more I listen to this, the more I get out of it. It's just fucking awesome. And you've never heard anything like this.
No, that is true. And I mean, it's interesting that you're saying that, you know, that kind of industrial machinery sound that we kind of discussed earlier on the fourth track of the album, where I said it sounded as if they were actually pulling a chain. Like, if that genuinely is just a straight up guitar sound, I mean, that's phenomenal. That is phenomenal, man. Like, I mean, that just demonstrates their kind of, I don't know, musical prowess. Is that a word? Does that make sense? Musical prowess. Yeah, fuck it, that makes sense. Musical prowess. I mean, that is phenomenal. It's difficult for me. I mean, I couldn't give it a 10 out of 10. That's because, you know, I'm not a massive fan of the genre. You know, as we said, broadly speaking, they probably would be considered a kind of metal band. I've given it a 7 out of 10, though, which is, I would say, is a pretty good rating. And I certainly think fans of the genre will love it, will get a lot out of it. And maybe if I do go back to it, because I certainly will go back to listening to Who I Am, Sulphur Surrounding, Underneath, and maybe if I do go back, listen to them a bit more often, and maybe it'll, I don't know, not force me, but make me want to kind of listen to a bit more of the album, and you never know, maybe on more listens it'll grow a bit more on me, who knows?
Yeah, I think
The point is that this is still, like, despite those songs you reeled off, like, those are more accessible songs. This is very much still an extremely heavy album. I think the band themselves have come out and said, we're trying to become a massive band and reach a wider audience. And I think this album does that, but without losing its extreme roots. Because for every Sulphur Surrounding or Underneath, there's a Swallowing the Rabbit Whole or a Cold Metal Place. And, you know, there's as much brutality on here, if not more, in fact, as there is melody. So I think this album probably does have a fairly broad appeal, at least more so than your average hardcore metal band, but it's still very much a niche product. I'm a big fan of hardcore and metal, and I do like some extreme music, but not as extreme as some people do. So I think that's why this has spoken to me in particular, because it's a good middle ground between being extremely heavy and being a bit more accessible. I can see why fans of more extreme music could be put off by it, and I can also see why fans of less extreme music would be put off by it because perhaps it's too heavy.
Yeah.
So I think what you're saying is totally fair.
Okay. But it's going into the Head Scratcher Scratchcast Hall of Fame, as it were. It's going to be up there.
I think it has to be for me because
listening to their previous album Forever, which is perhaps I think there's more heavy moments on that, so the heavier side of this album is more present on Forever, and I enjoyed Forever quite a bit. It was album of the year for loads of heavy music outlets the year it came out, and I can see why, but I fucking love this because I haven't heard anything quite like it. And yeah, there's elements of that on Forever, so I was perhaps more prepared for it than you. But yeah, there's nothing that sounds like this, so it has to be a 10, I think.
Cool. Okay.
So that was Underneath by Code Orange.
So, the next album we're going to be looking into is... I can't fucking find them in my notes.
Violent Soho.
That is the one. So, yeah.
I was going to say I threw this one in the last minute, but it wasn't really at the last minute, but it wasn't on the list for quite a while. I just kind of added it in because I thought we needed to talk about something else. But I'd been listening to it beforehand and I'd really got into it through a single called Vacation Forever, which I think came out towards the tail end of 2019. So I'd heard that single and kind of just kept my ear to the ground for more music coming from them. So Violent Soho, they're an alternative rock band from Brisbane in Australia, and this album is called Everything Is A-OK, and it's their 5th studio album. So, like I said, I only heard of this band because of that single, Vacation Forever. I hadn't heard anything from them, you know, I didn't know they even existed before that. So, what do you think about this album, Grant?
I enjoyed it. What I will say is, the album sounded really familiar. I hadn't heard of them before, I haven't kind of looked back into their kind of back catalogue or anything like that. But I found this album kind of instantly accessible, and as I said, it's, you know, really easy to listen to, really enjoyable, but really familiar. I think you can kind of tell where their influences have come from.
Yeah.
I don't know if you would agree with that or not. There was times where I remember thinking you could be forgiven for thinking this is like a NoFX song. There was times where I kind of felt as if the lead vocalist was kind of challenging his inner Fat Mike, his inner Mike Burkett from NoFX. And again, I thought that was purely down to an American accent. I mean, I listened to it on Spotify. I remember looking at the album cover, and the album cover is, I think, just that kind of your average kind of suburban home with a flagpole outside, and there's the Australian flag in it. And I was like, right, so they must be from Australia. And obviously, when I was kind of doing my research, I found that yeah, they are Australian. However, I did think the guy sounded quite American. There was times as well where I felt as if I could be listening to like a kind of Smashing Pumpkins song, like a kind of maybe not so much Smashing Pumpkins, but more like there was times where I thought he sounded like Billy Corgan. And I don't know if that's just because of the kind of lyrics that were used, like the combination of the lyrics or the assortment of the lyrics, or whether it was to do with the way he kind of put certain inflections. Yeah, there was one song in particular, the fourth track, Canada. Yeah, I remember thinking, yeah, I could listen to a Smashing Pumpkins song. Be interested to see where's the kind of trademark Rumpelstiltskin.
See, I think the reason I kind of latched on to the single Vacation Forever was because
I thought he sounded exactly like Billy Corgan, and it sounded exactly like a Smashing Pumpkins song, so I was like, this is fucking great. It just sounds like classic alt-rock of that Smashing Pumpkins, Pixies kind of era. And I mean, he sounds like Billy Corgan, but at times he also sounds like Frank Black.
How much does the opening track sound like the riff? So it kind of starts off with kind of discordant kind of guitar sounds and drum sounds and what have you, but then when it kind of breaks into the riff, I thought it sounded like My Hero from Foo Fighters.
I didn't get that, but I'm not saying you're wrong.
Honestly, go back and listen to it. I'm not like accusing them of plagiarism or anything like that, but it's almost identical. It must just be a kind of a well-used chord progression or a natural chord progression that they're using or something. But it's very similar.
Regardless,
It's a really cool riff.
Oh, I definitely, yeah.
But yeah,
I really like the opening track, Sleep Here. Like you say, it's got that main riff, which is a proper headbanger, and like a lot of these songs, it's that classic loud, quiet, loud dynamic again, where you've got a quiet, more of a strained verse, and it bursts into a massive chorus, and yeah, it's a good way to start the album. I can see what you're talking about with the sort of NoFX punk rock vibes, especially on the next track, Pick It Up Again. It's got a really sort of antagonistic, sneering vocal delivery on it, and I was struggling to think what it reminded me of, but I was thinking I was getting a sort of early Green Day vibe from it. Definitely early Green Day and not current Green Day. Yeah, it's a good song, and I think I do like this album quite a lot, and I think it's just because it's familiar, and I'm a big alt-rock fan, you know, there's a lot of sort of nostalgic appeal to it with kind of modern production values.
Yeah.
Much like, you know, Dinosaur Pile Up, a lot of their latest tracks did it well, and there's a band called Culture Abuse who do the modern alt-rock thing quite well with their recent-ish album Bay Dreams, and also Drug Church as well, who deal with sort of big riffs and slacker vocals. There's a lot to love about this album with quite a few standout tracks. I mean, I keep mentioning Vacation Forever because I think it's one of the best songs on there. There's another song called Lying on the Floor, which has just got, well, the riff on that is just awesome, and it ends on this really cool bending sort of squealing note, and it's got like this catchy chorus that just goes, lying on the floor is all I want to do, and you know, that's as slacker as you can get.
Aye.
So there's, I think, a handful of really great songs, and the rest of them are just good.
Yeah, I would agree. The kind of songs that I've kind of picked out as being standout songs, as you said, Pick It Up Again. It was this song in particular that I kind of felt was reminiscent of some of the stuff that Fat Mike and NoFX have done. In particular, I think it was just his vocals, just the way he was singing. It just reminded me of Dying Degree, which is a song off the Punk in Drublic NoFX album, for anybody who's familiar with that. The fourth track, Canada, is brilliant as well. The kind of opening and closing guitar riff I've kind of described as being really kind of infectious. It was this song that kind of made me think that I was listening to a bit more of an upbeat kind of Smashing Pumpkins or Swan song. Same with the following track, Slow Down, Sonic. Really quite enjoyed that as well. Again, just with that particular kind of vocal refrain of Did I Fall Enough With You? Just, it seems like as we said, just seems like something straight out of a Smashing Pumpkins song. And I just kind of have described it as being a kind of really lovely, kind of dreamy number. But yeah, a really good album.
Yeah. Well, how would you rate it?
I've rated it an 8 or 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I go an 8, I think.
Go an 8. A safe 8.
It's a really good album.
You're not necessarily going to hear anything new, but if you're into this kind of music, it doesn't really matter. There's a familiar sound, but like I said, there's a handful of great songs and then a bunch of good songs. But there aren't any bad songs, not even close. So yeah, it's a really good album.
Absolutely.
So that was Everything Is A-OK by Violent Soho.
So that's us.
That is us, yeah.
That's our lot for today.
That is our lot for today. If I can even speak.
So that's the end of another episode of the Scratchcast. Thanks for listening. We hope you've enjoyed our rambling discussions.
Hopefully the sound quality turns out quite well. There's not too many bits where we sound like robots.
So we hope you've enjoyed it, but most of all, we hope you take the time to actually check out some of the music we've covered and perhaps fall in love with a new band or two. Please do get in touch, as we'd love to hear your thoughts on what we've covered and indeed your suggestions for what to cover in the future. Don't forget to subscribe to the Scratchcast on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And please leave a nice review as it helps spread the word about our humble show, despite my grand claims at the beginning of this episode. Remember, the Scratchcast is the official podcast of The Head Scratcher, the alternative pop culture guide. So you can also visit us at theheadscratcher.com, where we post pop culture reviews and recommendations, all the episodes of the podcast, and our monthly alternative music playlist. April's playlist is available now, so go and check that out and slap it on shuffle. It's roughly 7 hours of brilliant music. Once you're done with that, check out the rest of the playlist and please let us know your favourite tracks. You can also visit and like us on Facebook at The Head Scratcher and on Instagram, as well as on Twitter at ScratcherHead. We also have a YouTube channel where you'll find all of our reviews edited down into individual album reviews. So if you can't be arsed listening to a full episode, then you can just listen to a particular album review. Our top 20 albums of all time are all on there too. So thanks again. Please remember to tell your friends, your enemies, your families and your pets. We'll catch you next month on episode 9. You got anything else to say for yourself, Grant?
I don't. I've got nothing to say for. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Stay at home as well.
Most of all, stay home. Yeah.
Stay at home. Most of all, stay at home unless necessary. Use your time constructively. You could be using your time constructively and listening to some of the albums that we've discussed. As Snedds said, any feedback of any sort is always appreciated.
Even negative feedback, because it all helps improve the experience.
Absolutely. Because, constructive criticism.
Yeah, you're shite.
What's that, man?
It's a heap of shite.
Yeah, that's all I have to say. That's us then, man. It'd be interesting to see how well that's recorded. There was a few times, like I said, I didn't want to interrupt you, man. But when you were discussing Code Orange, it was like, I don't know how well that's going to translate to audio.
Yeah, if there's an issue, I'll maybe have to do some sort of overdub or something and fill in the gaps. I don't know what with, but I'll make it work.
Yeah.
Lol.
It's not finished. It's finished.